I am here with David Wolff, the developer of the Underdock Mini Reef. David, tell us about the permitting process.
Permitting wise, what we developed over the years here is they have to be underneath an existing permitted structure, so a dock, a pier, or whatever. So that the state, Army Corps, et cetera, has said the area can be disturbed. They're not permanently attached. The way they attach to the docks, they can be removed in the future. So they get around any local permitting. In fact, most of the cities like Marco Island here that have been buying units, they've actually been issuing like no permit required letters just so that residents can know, hey, you don't even have to call us, like you don't have to do anything. And then because they float, they're off the bottom. This is just sheer luck. They perform much better floating, but they're off the bottom, so you get away from Army Corps, any bottom like artificial reef laws if you happen to be in a preserve or something like that. As long as we're installing them, FDEP doesn't want to deal with it, because we sat in a meeting and we were told by the district here, Southwest Florida, going down through Monroe, that they don't have a box to check for us. They're basically, this is the same thing as a bait bucket tied off to a dock. So they really don't have a mechanism to ask for permitting. They'd have to create something, and it would have to include like floating fish pens, and it'd be a regulatory nightmare. And all they really want is to see a few years of us doing this. Some storms come through. What's the loss rate? If this isn't going to become debris everywhere and it's producing life, all of them, they're like, well, then we're going to say let's promote it now. Let's make it bigger. They're not going to put that in writing for me, but
yeah.
How have the Underdock Mini Reefs performed in storms, David?
Like FDEP, the people we've talked to, they were happy after Irma that we lost one unit, and it was because the entire dock was destroyed by the boat that broke loose during it. You don't want to pull these out. Number one, they weigh 200 pounds when they're full of life. I don't know if you could pull them out. Number two, just the way they're designed for water to flow through them to feed, all the filter feeders on them. They don't really get pushed around by water current. The floats, even though they are above the surface, once the unit has some weight, it's about that much. So really, even wind hardly moves them much. So in something like Irma, when people who came out during the eye wall, or during the eye when it came over Marco here, there were still like white caps in the canals here and stuff. The units just had water. The waves were just splashing over the top of them, and they were just kind of sitting there not moving, because once they're heavy, the water flows through and they just kind of sit. They don't go anywhere.
Give us your statement on where this all began and what you hope to accomplish with this project.
Well, the research for this was actually done during the mid to late 90s. The Marine Habitat Foundation at Sanibel Island. That it was myself, Mike Kalinsky, who was a new college grad, and a couple of the people who kind of came and went, who were going through grad school, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, people thought the environment was fine in the 90s. We don't need to do anything. And funding, kind of dried up, and that nonprofit closed. And everybody went their separate way. So I went into real estate for 17 years. Or no, I guess 15 years. And was pretty successful at it. But when I sold my businesses and got back out, I wanted to get back into marine biology. It's what I went to school for. And found out that nobody had done anything with all this work we did. We had the American Plastics Council had given us $250,000 in grant money, developing these. We've done tons and tons of work. The saddest part about all that is all the research, all the numbers, all that stuff vanished with time, between Hurricane Charlie destroying somebody's house and all that side. I wish I had all that data, because it was just mountains of it. But 4 years ago, I restarted this work, created Ocean Habitats, which is a name more for the fact that it was available on everything than I'm in love with it, but because we had probably about 10% of this still needed to be finalized to make sure. I'm not worried about hurricane. I'm not worried about all the various questions that we get. And basically January of last year, so really only 13 months ago, we finally got to the point of we have our finished prototype. If we were mass producing these, they'd be a little different coming out of machines. So, the float would be blow molded and instead of welded and stuff like we're doing by hand. But we had a unit that we knew would be fine. Number one, because we just had Irma blow through here and all the units were fine.
Yes, that's a good
But that's when we finally started advertising, saying, "Hey, these are available. We're a nonprofit.
Right.
We're trying to. Our mission is to help bring coastal waters back to life here, because unfortunately they're nothing like they used to be. And we've got, this isn't going to solve all the problems, obviously, but it's a step in the right direction. It's something we can do right now, and it utilizes all this wasted space. There's I think over 700,000 residential docks in Florida, and there's probably another couple 100,000 commercial slips and city-owned properties and that type of thing. If you just had 2 or 3 of these underneath every single one of these structures, you'd be cleaning billions and billions of gallons of water a day, filtering it, with Mother Nature, who most of these animals can't attach to the seawall and the pilings. They're not as good as oysters are. You'd be producing, hundreds of millions of fish and crabs every year, things that we need to have more of because we're running out. And, basically, why not? Let's do this. All these structures are here. Let's use them. It's no extra expense. The people who are putting these in, $250 is nothing to them to, get them in, and we're installing them so they don't have to get wet or dirty or hire anybody. It's like simple. And so, we're hoping the idea keeps catching on of like, we got to do something now. We can't wait for a plan that involves a 17-year time scale from the government of all the restoration work and everything we're doing.
There is a lot of concern about microplastics. How does your product handle this?
Well, the polypropylene that we have, according to the manufacturer, they give it a 500-year lifespan in seawater. And when I talked to them, they told me that you'd be looking at least like 100 years before you'd be having any type of maybe small pieces on edges starting to break off. So they gave it a very long lifespan this way.
Tell us what kind of fish and critters you found in these underdock mini reefs so far.
We get blue crab, stone crab, some of their lesser known relatives like mangrove crabs, and there's mud crabs and those. Fish, we've had over 60 species we found on them. So you have things like porkfish, mangrove snapper, some people would call gray snapper. We've had like juvenile, like very small, we're talking like this, but redfish, snook, red and black drum, a lot of bait fish, mahoras, and we've had like permits and a lot of those kind of fish using it. And then there's also there's what grows up inside of it, but then you get like a food chain that grows up around the dock. Because of, obviously if on average 300 young fish kind of get to decent fingerling size or larger and leave, you don't start off with 300, you have more than that. That's how Mother Nature works.
Of course, exactly.
So you usually get like mangrove snapper, like to school underneath the unit, and they're looking up for whoever's not paying attention. And then, because mangroves are there, especially like the kind of, 6-month-old or about 6-7 inches like this, that's a primary food source for snook and redfish and everything that we like to catch. So they start coming by and checking the place out. You get, like in the canals here now, people are getting like young barracuda, about like this. They haven't seen in 20 years in the water here. And then you get all the way up to the dolphins coming through, feeding on the fish who are stacking up, looking at each other to see who's going to eat who.
We need to be filtering this water and cleaning it up so we don't have more red tide and nutrients. How long does it take to get oysters to grow here?
So it takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months for filter feeders to be born, find it, land on it, and grow up on it. If you're in an area that's getting fresher and you're getting into more of only like shelled animals like oysters, they're going to take a year to get to full size. So it kind of depends on how salty it is and exactly what time of year you're putting them in, but you're somewhere between 3 and 12 months depending on what's on there to get to like the full filtering capacity, but it takes a full 3 years to get to a climax community.
So you have 2,000 of these already installed in Florida, and you have answered many of our questions. I'm sure people will have more, but this is a very exciting project. Thank you very much, David.